Welcome, friends. I'm so glad to have you here with me tonight. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about excerpts from a YouTube video on Derek and Jill Dillard's YouTube page. In my opinion, this is a huge part of the story when it comes to dissecting what's happened with the Duggar family over the past several years. There's a thunderstorm happening here right now. We get at least one thunderstorm a day in Kuala Lumpur, so you'll probably hear the thunder in the background, which I personally really like. I love thunderstorms, so I hope it's okay for you. It always gives me an excuse to try to take a nap. But getting back to the show and the family, it was about 4 years ago that Jill and Derek washed their hands clean of the new show Counting On. They no longer appeared in any of the TLC episodes, and the show really seemed to start centering around Jessa and her family. At first, Jill and Derek were quiet. We didn't know what had happened, though there were a lot of whisperings going on in the back streets of Reddit pages. Then, approximately 2-3 years ago, the Dillards made a YouTube page and started posting videos with questions from fans. In one of the Q&As, Derek and Jill spoke as honestly as they could at the time about their relationship with Jim Bob and the rest of the family and what had happened with them leaving the show. It's sort of like they were trying to warn us that there was a lot more going on behind the scenes. And this was our first look at having an insider say, like, yes, this is for real. There are problems within our family. Not everything is as it seems on the TLC show. We were finally getting that confirmation. And I want to preface this with saying I'm a big fan of Jill. I think she's done an amazing job, and I see her as being incredibly brave. I live my life, and I've said this before on my channel, by the rule of 0 to 100. And that rule is all about how there's a big, wide scale in life. If I consider Jill as a very conservative, very religious person at 0, and then I consider someone else that I know in my life who's incredibly liberal and incredibly non-religious at 100, the goal I would have for both of them when it comes to getting along and seeing eye to eye is to someday, over time, be able to meet somewhere in that 50 range. I don't expect Jill to move from 0 to 100, just like I don't expect whoever is over here to move from 100 to 0. There's always a bunch of in-between numbers and a large range in the scale. It's not fair for me to judge someone at 0 or 100. Neither side is better than the other, but there's always an in-between where we can all meet. Some people will say that Derek and Jill have still stated that they believe that marriage should only be between a man and a woman, and that this is evidence we can't trust them or support them because that person at 100 doesn't agree with any of that. I feel like that is so short-sighted. You are losing, that person at 100 is losing a chance to make a connection with the person at 0 and someday be able to pull them more towards the center so that we can all try to meet with each other eye to eye and create some kind of understanding, even if we still don't fully agree with that person. Quite honestly, the world would be a better place if we lived by this scale and tried to come into the middle at times to understand where she's coming from. We will have a better world where we can all care a little bit more about one another. That's my perspective. So when I look at Jill and Derek, although they may have beliefs that I don't fully share all the time, I respect them. I'm happy, especially for Jill, having gone out, created her own independent life separate from her family, living the way that she wants to live. And on my channel, I support what her and Derek have been doing for the past 4 or 5 years. The fact that they moved away from the family. Derek went to school. He's an attorney now, and he works as a prosecutor. Jill has made all kinds of steps to move away from some of the things she feels were not good in her childhood. And some of those things she's held on to, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But you let me know below because I care about your opinions too. So share them here with me down in the comments. Let's take a look at what Jill and Derek had to say just a couple of years ago, letting us know that something big was going on in the background of the Duggar family.
So question number 1 is, why did you leave the show? Well, we left the show like 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Because basically our family goals that we had for ourselves didn't align with what we found out. That like we ended up finding out like we didn't have as much control over our lives as it related to like the show and stuff.
On subsequent interviews, Derek will talk about how he really wanted to continue on with doing mission trips and working overseas. But once they had signed on to the Counting On contract, which they felt had been kind of misleading for them and they weren't getting paid for, they were told that they wouldn't be able to pursue those kinds of ambitions, that they needed to stay in the area so that they could continue to do filming. And they felt very restricted as to the options they were given.
As we felt like we needed. So we had to make a decision at that time to kind of put the show aside just to like pursue our own goals and everything. So yeah, that's when we made that decision.
You can tell Jill's trying to be very careful how she phrases things here. First and foremost, I believe that Derek was concerned about potentially getting sued. And secondly, I know that Jill wanted to be careful. She doesn't want to hurt people or say too much to further damage her family, maybe than it already is. I do want to mention, and I think we're well aware, that the birth of Jill and Derek's first baby was filmed for the show. And this ended up being a big deal because Jill hemorrhaged and the hospital bill ended up being significant. After the filming and everything that this couple went through, they went to TLC and allegedly asked them to pay at least part of the hospital bill since they did film it for the show and they weren't getting paid otherwise. At that point, TLC was like, what do you mean you're not getting paid? We pay your father, Jim Bob. And this is kind of where the shit really hit the fan.
And it was just like a good decision for us. And nothing against our film crew or anything. They're great. We love them. But yeah, it was a really difficult decision, but something that we knew like we really needed to do for our family.
One thing I love about Jill's YouTube videos versus specifically Ginger's YouTube videos is that I never feel like Jill is being pressured to do this or that her husband is like kind of taking over on the screen, which is something I often feel with poor Ginger. Just that Ginger doesn't feel as comfortable. And even though Jill shows like some nervousness here, I think she does just a great job of speaking out and stating her own points about the situation.
Anything to add?
Yeah, basically, like Joel said, we just learned some information just before we had to quit filming because we were kind of put between a rock and a hard place where we had to choose between our family goals or filming, and really felt like it was in our best interest as a family to pursue our family goals.
So I'm pretty sure the information they learned was, number one, that they wouldn't be able to go ahead and continue on a mission or go overseas, but that number two, they had been told for a long time that Jim Bob and the family were doing this show as a ministry and therefore were not getting paid for it. When they found out that Jim Bob had been getting paid for it and that the money was funneled wherever he wanted it to go, they were kind of shocked about the situation, allegedly.
Question number 2. Will you ever go back on the show? You were going to say?
Yeah, we will not go back on the show under the circumstances that we were under at the time that we left, meaning just as a family, we have to be able to make decisions that allow us to navigate our lives and have...
Good for you, Derek. Now, I don't want to compare and contrast, but there are other men on the show that I can't see standing up in the way that Derek did and saying like, look, we're not going to be treated or used this way. We've already been through so much with having it come out that my wife was inappropriately touched by her brother. You made her go and do this interview on TV. Like, we have done so much for this show and this family, and you guys are using us. That's flat out what was happening. Now, many people have turned around and said like, oh, they're grifting. They just want money. They just want this and that. I really encourage you to think about everything that Jill went through, and then in turn what Derek as her husband had to be going through in a situation where like they don't have a bunch of money, they're not being funded, except I know that there were times that they were given like a home to stay in by Jim Bob, but they had no freedom, they had no way to break free, they had no way to make their own decisions. And Derek was really like, I'm not going to live this way, I'm going to find another way to take care of my family, and he did.
The
Information and control over our lives.
The information and control, so that we know whether or not we can even plan anything for our lives or not.
So yeah, probably not full time on the show. Right now we have no plans to like join back into the show or anything. So
I would watch a show that was all about Jill, just kind of talking about her life and what she went through, like a 3 or 4 part series where she gets paid to just sit down and kind of really talk about, as honestly as she possibly can, like what she went through and her journey since then. I would love to see that.
okay, so question number 3: do you regret leaving the show?
Poor Jill and Derek. It's like there are no other questions. The only thing people want to hear about is the tea about why, how, when, where, what's going on with you leaving the show.
No, we don't regret leaving the show. We feel like it was the best thing for our family, and especially at that time. And even now, like there's been like other things that we've just been grateful for, like more family time. Not that we didn't get that on the show either, but like, well, just it like dictating like more of our schedule, taking up a lot of extra hours outside of like regular work hours. That
I love how Derek was like, nope, don't regret it at all. Because you know what? After they left the show and separated themselves from Jim Bob, they had to go live in like a hokey little place. They didn't have a lot of money. They were really struggling financially during this time, hence probably why they started the YouTube, maybe. And, you know, people call them like they're grifting. But it's like he went to school. He got into law school. He decided to go to school. He made something better of himself. And they had to live really simply during that time to try to make ends meet. And I think they did. I couldn't ask for, there's very little more that I could ask for them. They really have done a brave job of trying to get away from Jim Bob.
Question number 4: are you there for filming events, or are you edited out?
We've been at weddings and funerals, and I guess if we're not shown, it's because we're edited out.
So we're going to learn that it isn't just that Jill and Derek and their family aren't on the show. It's that they are deliberately taking space and time away from the Duggars, specifically Jim Bob, but really everyone.
Question number 5: has there been some distancing with family, and why?
Oh snap. Here we go, friends. Time for some tea. Now this is going to be said in the gentlest, kindest way you've ever heard anybody spill tea on their family.
So yes, there's been some distancing there. We're not on the best terms with some of my family.
Jim Bob.
We've had some disagreements and stuff. But we're working toward healing, definitely, and restoration. But we're having to kind of just take some time and heal, and just doing what's best for our family right now.
This is when I realized that clearly Jill was getting into some therapy here, because she's bringing up words like healing and restoration, and she's just doing it in such a way as to come off as a really strong, forgiving, loving person.
And yeah, just working through it, I guess. So it's difficult, but like we're praying and trusting God that like this, like the timeline is his and what that looks like and everything. So
I'm sorry, but I just really love it how Derek is totally there as a side piece in this video. Like, very little to say, just nodding along. I think the roles are reversed. Like, when we see Michelle and Jim Bob speaking, like, Derek is Michelle in this video, nodding along and giving support.
Definitely appreciate your prayers, but don't want to go into detail too much, but yeah.
I'm sorry, but I really don't understand how people cannot have sympathy for Jill. She's clearly been through a lot, and she was raised in a certain doctrine to believe certain things and to live a certain way, and she's really come out in a very strong way against a lot of it. Like, I'm really proud of everything she's accomplished, how far she's tried to move away from some of the more toxic things that she had going on when she was growing up, and I appreciate that she does cling on to certain things like her faith in a way that I think has been positive for their family.
So thank you guys for watching our YouTube channel and our blog.
Okay, so there's a couple more questions to this video that you can find on their YouTube page if you want to check it out. I think that they're so worthy of clicks and views. A good family who is doing the best they can with whatever situation they were born into, and I love trying to support them as best as I can. Jill is appearing in the upcoming documentary, and I am so excited about that. She says on the premiere that she wants to be the one to be able to tell some of her story. And we have heard that she got pretty close with Bobby Holt from the Holt family, who came and testified against Josh at his trial. I have so much more to say about Jill and Derek, specifically about their relationship with Josh, and a lot of weird clips in which Josh, I feel, is exhibiting weird jealousy towards Jill. Thanks for joining me tonight, and please tune in tomorrow so we can head down yet another Duggar rabbit hole.